Afternoon all, Ryan Taylor here. Hope you are keeping safe and well and enjoyed the warm weather over the weekend. But as it's Tuesday, it's time to crank things up a notch again, obviously. My column went live this morning, Taylor's Tuesday transfers at 9 a.m. on Express Sport. If you haven't had the chance to read it yet, don't worry, we're going to be delving into the stories in further detail and talking about them at length in here. But if you do fancy a little read, going to post a little link in the description below. You can follow that through and have a glance at some of the stories that featured. I wanted to start off with Arsenal, really. I've had quite a few questions about what's going on at Arsenal in the past few weeks. But it appears, things are a little different to how to the picture that I'd previously gathered. I had a few updates yesterday, which you may have seen on my Twitter account. Some of them caused a bit of a stir, really, just because it's kind of conflicting information to some of the stuff that's been published in the wider media in the past few days. And that's mainly centred around Raphinha. Now, obviously, Raphinha, as I've talked about last week, is a player that is of huge interest to Arsenal. That's despite him playing in the same position as Bukayo Saka. Obviously, there's been a little bit of question marks as to why Arsenal are so keen on spending big on a player that plays in the same position as Saka, given his importance to Mikel Arteta. Obviously, Raphinha, as I've previously touched upon, did have a relegation clause written into his Leeds deal worth in the region of £21 million. But, that's pretty much irrelevant now, given that he helped Leeds to survival. However, things are starting to ramp up a bit now with Raphinha. Obviously, we know Barcelona were firmly interested. In the past few months, past few weeks, there's been negotiations with his agent Deco, who of course used to play for Barcelona. But Arsenal now look to be one of the clubs in the ascendancy for the Brazilian. Leeds are kind of expecting to offload him this summer. You may remember the picture of Raphinha after the final home game of the season for Leeds against Brighton. He was sort of pictured slouched against the post, looking very reflective. It was kind of an indication that he felt this might be his last game at Ellen Road. Obviously, you may have seen his comments on international duty that he's not necessarily fixated on leaving Leeds this summer because he's playing regular football and it's a World Cup year. He wants to cement his place in Tite's Brazil squad for Qatar. So I think there's an appreciation that Raphinha, is more than likely going to move on this summer. But Leeds hold a strong negotiating stance, given that they survived. They're looking for around £50 million and potentially upwards of that, depending on what sort of offers arrive on the table. Now, my understanding of Arsenal's interest in Raphinha is that he's a concrete target, without a doubt. But at the moment, there's nothing advanced, no serious developments of note was what it was described to me as. Obviously, there's been talk of a bid from Arsenal. There's been talk of club-to-club negotiations. Now, that's been from the likes of Fabrizio Romano. Now, I'm not saying that, that necessarily isn't the case. It's just not the information I've received on it. Supporters on Twitter are very much keen to say, well, he said that and you're saying this, so who's right? One of you's wrong. Trying to play you against each other. I'm not really into that, to be honest. Just because another journalist has got a little bit of differing information to you doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong or they're wrong. Journalists speak to different contacts and sources and therefore get different information. Sometimes it aligns, that's what you hope, everything aligns, but sometimes there is slightly different lines of info that comes out of either, sources close to the player or a club. So I'm very much keen to swerve kind of, comparing information to other journalists and trying to be, I'm better than you kind of thing. Obviously, Fabrizio's a friend of mine, who's someone who helps me with stories, but obviously he is, the undisputed best at what he does. So, I'm not saying there haven't been club-to-club negotiations between Leeds and Arsenal, but at the moment, that was not information that was relayed to me, so I'm not going to just pretend that is something that, I'm aware of. So at the moment, I don't believe that is something that, from certain sides of the story, that's obviously the narrative that's been, how can I put it, being shared. But from my perspective, my understanding is that Arsenal are simply interested in Raphinha. But at the moment, they feel Leeds are slightly looking to encourage a bidding more. So they're looking to use Arsenal's interest to drive up the kind of heat and speculation around the player that encourages other clubs to come to the table with offers. You know, there's a sense that if Leeds were to, you know, all these clubs that are interested in Raphinha, the likes of Barcelona, Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea have been linked, even Liverpool have been linked in the past. If they can kind of play all those against each other, they're going to maximise potential profit that they make. Obviously, they signed Raphinha for around about £17 million from Stade Rennes in October 2020. It's pretty clear, you know, he's, with all due respect to Leeds, he's a player that will probably go on to greater things. You know, we're talking Champions League. You know, we saw his numbers last season. I think he had 11 goals in the Premier League. He was just razor sharp, Raphinha, at times. And you do think, you know, if Leeds didn't have him, then they probably would have been relegated. So that's the kind of feeling surrounding Raphinha, that maybe Leeds are looking to really use, I can't talk today, really use Arsenal's interest to drive up that interest and that price tag. That, you know, they're more than aware that he's probably going to move on to this summer, but, you know, they want to maximise the fee that they receive. They're not going to let him go on the cheap just because Barcelona don't have much money, and terms have been agreed between Raphinha and Barca for several months. I don't think Raphinha is necessarily going to push for a move, but it's a case of waiting for the right offer to arrive, one that satisfies Leeds, who are, of course, exploring other targets at the moment. Just moving on to Youri Tielemans. Obviously, he's a player that, you know, even by the likes of myself, has been reported as a concrete primary target for Arsenal. But there was a kind of change of direction on that yesterday when I spoke to a source who said, you know, Arsenal were kind of called their interest in Tielemans. How was it put to me? I was told it was never as close as suggested, and that, to be honest, to stop writing about Tielemans and Arsenal, because there's not really anything to it at the moment. I know, once again, other journalists have reported similar and also different, but that's my understanding. However, I would sort of operate with caution on that front, given that he's in the final year of his Leicester contract, which means he's available on the cheap. He's looking for a move, really, to move on from Leicester. Obviously, they've hit a bit of a divot. Obviously, they were, I think, 5th and 6th in the Premier League in 2019-20 and 2020. Was it that year? I can't remember. There was 2 seasons they just narrowly missed out on Champions League football. Obviously, they're going through a bit of a period of transition now. There's a feeling that selling Tielemans would allow Leicester to spend a little bit more on other targets. So that's kind of the picture with Tielemans. You know, it's a deal that could be revisited further down the line, but at the moment, he's not of priority. I don't know when this video will get up, but as of yesterday, I was told within the next 24 hours, Arsenal were hoping to announce the signing of Fabio Vieira from Porto. New England Revolution goalkeeper Matt Turner will also be having his medical on Wednesday, which is tomorrow at time of recording. He officially joins on July 1st, and that should be confirmed later in the week. Just another snippet now of Arsenal news as well. Fullback Jordi Osei Totu, who spent last season on loan at Rotherham, he's going to be joining Bochum in the Bundesliga on a permanent deal. He spent the 2019-20 season on loan there in Germany, made quite an impression, but he's since had spells with the likes of Cardiff, Forest and Rotherham last season. But he's going to join Bochum, who have also agreed a deal with Southampton to sell Germany under-21 international Armel Bella-Kotchap to Southampton. I've heard really good things from reporters that cover the Bundesliga. They think he's a really big prospect. Obviously, a name that could be paired with Mohamed Salisu at the heart of Ralph Hasenhüttl's defence. So that's going to be an interesting one. So that's the kind of Arsenal snippets that I've been working on. Obviously, Lisandro Martinez is another target. The talks and negotiations are ongoing with Ajax. There's been a rejected £25 million bid. There's been talk Arsenal are going to raise their offer to £30 million. The same also applies to Gabriel Jesus, who is obviously the priority as well. I should have mentioned that earlier in the video. Jesus and Martinez are the priorities at the moment for Arsenal. Raphinha's up there as well. There's a feeling that Martinez can cover at left back as well, so he'd be killing two birds with one stone. Jesus, Arsenal had a bid in the region of £35 million plus add-ons rejected by Manchester City last week for Jesus. There's still other clubs in the frame, even Tottenham and Chelsea. So they're looking to close that Arsenal, but they may have to move quickly and up their offer to get that one over the line. Just wanted to move on now to some of the other stories in my column. We had on Express Sport an exclusive update from sources close to Armando Broja. They say he would be willing to consider any offer that arrives from West Ham for the player. And it's understood the Hammers are looking to open the bidding in the coming days for Broja and really test Chelsea's resolve. They're looking to offer around about £30 million, potentially slightly less, 25 million. Obviously, Broja really impressive, mainly in patches though, on loan at Southampton last season. I think he scored 6 Premier League goals, but I'm surprised he didn't get more than that, because the way he's been perceived was that he was, largely really effective. I think he had 2 back-to-back really good performances against United and Tottenham. He's only 20, but he's like a man. He's not a young player who's looking to mature. He literally looks like a man up front, a brute who can bully defenders by himself. And, if you take that into consideration, that he's only going to get bigger, stronger, more experienced, I think Broja is going to be a serious striker, to be honest with you. And I think, over time, 30 million could prove a snip. We know West Ham are interested. Whether that kind of money would be enough to entice Chelsea into a sale would be, something that's up for a debate. Obviously, the interesting element to the interest is that Marina Granovskaya is leaving Chelsea. Something that's expected to happen imminently. She is the transfer negotiator. She handles all of the club's business in terms of incomings and outgoings. So, from what's being reported, it sounds like any decision on Broja could rest with new owner Todd Bowley and Thomas Tuchel. From what I understand, and this has always been the case in the past 2 to 3 months, Tuchel has always wanted to look at Broja and the likes of Conor Gallagher, etc. In pre-season before making any decision over their future next season. West Ham are not the only club interested in Broja. There's also interest from the likes of Everton, Napoli. There's been other Premier League clubs. Southampton are not expected to go back in for him though. There was talk they could make a permanent move in January, but never actually bid for Broja. I think there could be opportunity still for Broja at Chelsea. The same source also reaffirmed that they are open to staying. But, you get the sense that after playing regular football in the Premier League last season with Southampton, Broja will want to play regularly. He's had that taste for it. He's got the taste for goals now. Obviously, it was a similar story when he was at Vitesse in Holland. So I think West Ham would be a great fit for him. A team that like to get the ball wide, like to get the ball in behind. They play a 4-2-3-1 system, which, really would suit Broja. He's a very dynamic forward. He can hold the ball up. Good finisher, strong, good in the air. So, I think West Ham, once again, know what they're doing. Be an astute signing, but I would question, whether 30 million would be deemed an acceptable proposal. But that's one that's going to, look to unfold in the coming days. Just some more news now. I talked a little bit about Nottingham Forest in my last video. As revealed by John Percy of The Telegraph, a deal is now close. It will be a club record deal for Union Berlin forward Taiwo Awoniyi. Sorry if my pronunciation's poor, but he was at Liverpool as recently as last year, 2021. He never played for Liverpool first team due to issues with a work permit. He was signed for 400 grand in August 2015, but Michael Edwards, of course, the former Liverpool sporting director, managed to negotiate a sell-on clause for Awoniyi. Awoniyi. I think that's how you pronounce it. Awoniyi. My bad. No disrespect to the striker. I mean, he's got a very respectable goal scoring record in the Bundesliga last year. He scored 15 goals in 31 league games. And Liverpool have got a 10% sell-on clause, so that means they're in line for a small windfall. Forest were expecting them to trigger the release clause, which is in the region of £16 million. Although there's been some suggestion the deal could be worth slightly more than that. But that's another one for Liverpool to, just a welcome bonus for them. It's, a deal that's paid off for them, given that they're going to profit now from a player that's not even played for the first team. But there are kind of high hopes for the Nigerian, who was also tracked by 2 other Premier League clubs, who made inquiries regarding his release clause. But Forest have moved really quickly since intensifying their pursuit of him. Just a little line as well on Moussa Niakate, who is, of course, the Mainz centre-back, a second Bundesliga deal that they're working on. Now, my information was that Forest were prepared to offer up to 10 million and the player wanted to join, but it appears they're trying to secure a bargain, really. The first offer was rejected by Mainz and considered lowball. And as you may have seen in the German media, Mainz are really annoyed now with the approach to negotiations. They find it almost insulting. And the way it's kind of going, they would probably prefer to sell him to another club just because of that insulting opening offer. But I expect Forest to return to the table with a more respectable offer, and there's still confidence it could get done. Just moving on now, an interesting one. Brighton have made an inquiry for Porto forward Evanilson. He's a player that's been linked very much with Manchester United in the past few days in the Portuguese press with Ojogo and publications like that. Now, I believe he has a release clause in the region of £86 million, which is obviously, well out of Brighton's reach. Obviously, Porto have made some really significant sales in the past few days after agreeing deals with Arsenal for Fabio Vieira and PSG for former Wolves loanee Vitinha. Sergio Conceição doesn't want to keep, not that I know him personally, but, it's pretty obvious he doesn't want to keep offloading all of his star players. Although that said, there's confidence Porto have got, that eye for recruitment from within. They've got a very good scouting network in South America, a very good academy. So I'm sure, if there's money to be made, it's one they would pursue. But, from the kind of information that I've received, Evanilson would probably be a little bit out of Brighton's reach. That said, they have good relations with Porto. They've recently signed 18-year-old Benicio Baker Buatli from Porto. He joined in January on loan from Porto and spent, I think it was Porto's B-side, but he spent time on loan with Brighton under-23s, and they've now made that move permanent. So there's good relations at the moment between Porto and Brighton. So it's one that, Brighton could still potentially pursue and test that valuation of the player with a bid. Funnily enough, the story which actually got a couple of days ago has been confirmed by his agent, Marcio Barros, who told 0-0. To those responsible for managing Evanilson's career, there's no official proposal yet to arrive. Only polls from England. There was an approach from Brighton. If a formal proposal arrives, we will analyse what's best for the player. Now, if you read, how the Portuguese press evaluate Evanilson, he's deemed to be someone who's going to be like a huge talismanic figure for Porto, one of their best players. They've got Mehdi Taremi in attack, who's a very underrated striker, but Evanilson appears to be someone who's going to be highly talked about in the years to come. He's only 22, recently signed in 2020 from Tombense, who are a Brazilian second division side, but he's already got building quite a reputation for himself. He scored 17 times in 45 league outings for Portugal, and if you're recording those kind of numbers as we've seen with Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz in the Primeira Liga, you've obviously got something about you. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there with Brighton. Also understand Nigerian left-back Zaidu Sanusi is a player Brighton are looking at as part of their recruitment process to potentially identify replacements for Marc Cucurella. City are expected to firm up their interest with a formal offer for the Spaniard, who was Brighton's player of the season last year. Obviously enjoyed a stunning debut campaign following his arrival from Getafe last summer. That was a deal I covered extensively. People close to Cucurella are not talking about City's interest at the moment. but we're expecting them to make an offer. Guardiola really wants him as his top left-back target. It could see Alexander Zinchenko move on elsewhere. We know Everton are interested. Arsenal and West Ham also monitoring his situation as well. Just a little line on Brighton as well. I believe Neil Maupay is a player that Brighton will consider offers for this summer. His contract's kind of dwindling now. I think he's only got 1 year remaining. It hasn't quite worked out for him this season, last season I should say, on the South Coast. Interestingly, another striker Brighton are looking at, just monitoring, nothing serious at the moment, is Swansea's Michael Obafemi, making quite a name for himself really at Swansea since arriving for up to £2 million, including add-ons from Southampton last summer. It's one that Southampton may now be living to regret. He scored 12 goals in 32 Championship matches last season. You may have saw his stunner he scored for Scotland against for the Republic of Ireland against Scotland in the recent international break. He's kind of a very dynamic forward with a low centre of gravity, a yard of pace. He can shoot low into the corners. Lots of great movement. Scored some really nice goals for Swansea actually. Seem to remember a few against Cardiff towards the end of the season. But Swansea are fearful of losing one of their star strikers this season. Obviously, Russell Martin's been building something in the second half of the campaign following his arrival from MK Dons. He's revealed Joel Pyro's representatives are not keen on discussing a new deal as of yet. Pyro scored 22 times after arriving on loan from PSV Eindhoven last summer. He's a player that's been monitored by Leicester, but they are yet to firm up their interest yet. You know, there is Premier League clubs sniffing about the highly rated Swansea duo, Obafemi and Pyro. So it's one definitely to keep an eye on in the coming weeks, I should say. There's nothing imminent, obviously. The players, I believe, Pyro was on international duty with... No, that's not the case, sorry. Obafemi, I should say, was on international duty with the Republic of Ireland. Probably both players are enjoying breaks at the moment, but upon return we expect interest to be ramped up in both of them. So it'll be interesting to see what materialises on that front. You know, Swansea are one of those teams that you, if you're looking for an outsider for promotion next season, if they can keep those, considering the amount of goals in the side, you would think, you know, they have a fairly decent chance. So yeah, that is all of the stories from my column this morning. It's only a quick video today. We're going to probably be having another one drop later in the week, but I just wanted to run through some of those stories and explain the detailed information and background I have on all of them. Don't forget to hit the like button below, also subscribe and get following my Twitter at Ryan Taylor Sport to keep posted on all the latest as things continue to move fast.